let's jump right in. Have you ever wished you could just, I don't know, upgrade your brain? Like learn a new skill way faster, think with more clarity, or maybe finally kick a bad habit? Well, the amazing thing is, the science of neuroplasticity says you totally can. It's this incredible ability our brains have to literally rewire themselves based on what we do and experience.
And I love how neuroscientist Andrew Huberman puts it. He says it holds this promise, a promise for all of us to think differently, to learn new things, and to adapt to whatever life throws our way by just becoming better. And listen, this isn't just some feel-good quote. It's a biological reality. Our brains were literally built for this kind of change. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about the brain's promise. Then, we're going to bust a major myth about all this. We'll get into the key neurochemicals. And then, the good stuff, your practical toolkit. And we'll wrap up by looking at the bigger picture, why your attention is basically your life.
All right, let's get into it. Part 1, the brain's promise. Let's start with the basics, right? How does your brain actually learn and change?
Okay, so this is a really critical point you gotta understand. When we're kids, our brains are basically sponges. Learning is passive. It just happens. We soak everything up without even trying. But then, somewhere around age 25, that window kind of closes. From that point on, if you want to change your brain, it's not going to be passive anymore. It takes a focused, deliberate, active process.
Okay, moving on. Part 2, busting plasticity myths. And this is a big one, because there's this massive misconception floating around about how brain change works, and honestly, it's holding so many of us back.
So let's get right to the heart of it. The myth, you've probably heard it, is that every single experience you have changes your brain. Sounds nice, right? But for adults, it's just not true. The reality? Only the experiences you pay super careful, deliberate attention to can actually change your brain. Think about that. Focus isn't just a nice to have. It is the non-negotiable price of admission for changing your brain as a grown-up.
And this right here, this is the massive problem we're all facing. Productivity expert Chris Bailey did the research, and he found that when we sit down at a computer, our average time working on one thing before we get distracted or interrupted is just, get this, 40 seconds. 40. I mean, how are we supposed to achieve that deep, rewiring focus when our attention is shattered into tiny little pieces like that?
So this leads us right into the really cool science. Section 3, the neurochemical key. Because when you do manage to focus, you're not just trying harder. No, you are literally triggering a chemical reaction inside your brain. It's a recipe for change. It really boils down to this 3-step recipe. First up is alertness. When you focus intensely, your brain releases epinephrine. You know it as adrenaline. And that basically gets your brain ready. It revs the engine. Second, you get a spotlight. A neurochemical called acetylcholine creates this cone of attention, zeroing in on what's important. And then step 3 is marking. That same chemical, acetylcholine, flags the neurons that are active and essentially tells your brain, hey, this right here, save this change. So it's alertness, spotlight, and marking. That's the magic sequence.
Okay, which brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole thing. Section 4, your practical focus toolkit. This is the how-to, how we can trigger this whole process on demand.
So the big question is, how can you actually improve your focus enough to get this powerful chemical state going whenever you need it?
All right, here's a ridiculously simple but incredibly powerful technique from Dr. Huberman. Check this out. Our mental focus is actually anchored to our visual focus. So if you want to dial up your mental concentration, you start with your eyes. Just pick a single, small target in front of you and just stare at it. That's it. As your visual focus narrows onto that one spot, your cognitive focus automatically follows, and boom, your brain starts releasing those key chemicals. It's a straight-up biological hack.
Now, a quick heads up. When you're really trying to focus like this, you might start to feel a little agitated, a bit of an edge. That's a good thing. Don't back away from it. That feeling is literally the epinephrine kicking in. It's the biological signal that you're doing it right and the change process is starting. So lean into that friction.
Of course, a biological hack is only half the battle. You've got to tame your environment too. Chris Bailey calls this creating your distraction-free mode. And the steps are simple, but, well, they're not always easy. Turn off the non-essential notifications, all of them. Put your phone in another room, I mean it, not just on silent in your pocket, but in a totally different room. And try working in these focused 90-minute sprints, which really syncs up with our brain's natural rhythm.
And to help you figure out what to focus on during that time, this framework from Bailey is awesome. He breaks down all our tasks into 4 buckets. We all naturally get pulled into that distracting quadrant, right? The stuff that's easy and attractive but gets us nowhere. But the real game changer is intentionally spending our limited attention on purposeful work and necessary work. It's worth asking yourself, how much of my day am I really spending in those top 2 boxes?
And this is where it all starts to click into place on a much deeper level. Chris Bailey nails it with this quote: "The state of our attention is what determines the state of our lives." See, this is way bigger than just a productivity tip.
So let's zoom out for our final part here. Part 5, your attention is your life. Because this right here is the ultimate payoff for all this effort.
Here's the bottom line, the ultimate takeaway. Managing your attention isn't just some productivity hack. It's a life strategy. Because when you choose what to pay attention to, you are actively choosing the very ingredients that build your brain. You're choosing how you experience reality itself. Put simply, in the most literal sense, you become what you pay attention to.
And so that really leaves us with one final and maybe the most important question to think about. If your attention is the raw material that builds your life, what is truly worthy of it?